Sahano Bhunaktu Saha Viryankaravavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. We have seen three different aspects of renunciation. One is setting up right value towards the world. Two, understanding that all that the world can offer to you as ephemeral, passing, transient. Three, all that the world can give you or it doesn't give you, you treat them as inconsequential. Setting up the right value means what is it that you are treating as a must for your life. That's the meaning of value. What is it that you think as the most important thing in your life? Right. One. Two is, do you take this, the world that you are involved right now, to be transient? Because all of us will say, values means, you say, yeah, for few things, I don't have exaggerated values, sir. But for few things of the world, I have an exaggerated value. You see, a few things we say, I have understood. I have understood few things in life is ephemeral, correct, passing. There are few things which I take as inconsequential. But renunciation is not doing it in parts, in bits and pieces. It is overall understanding of yours. Because as the saying goes in English, the strength of a chain is its weakest link. Same way, the strength of your renunciation is not based on so many things that you claim that you are not having an exaggerated value, or you have understood they are ephemeral. All this, a few things you take, believe as important. The few aspects that you treat them as permanent. This will be there with me. He will be there for me, sir. Or she will be there for me. That's why we got married, no? You scratch my back, I scratch your back. Isn't it? That's all marriage is. What else is that? Say, what else we understand with reference to marriage? You know, whatsoever you value to consider that as ephemeral is called renunciation. Remember, you will understand things are ephemeral. With reference to what you will understand as ephemeral is only with reference to the things that you are not valuing. Isn't it? Anything that you value, you consider that as what? Anything that you treat as important, how you treat that, how you deal with it, vis-a-vis the things that you consider not important. The toy car is not important to you. Therefore, when it breaks, there is no problem. But your car is important, valuable to you. Therefore, nothing should happen to that, isn't it? If anything happens to that car, what happens to you? That monopoly house is okay. But your house is treated to be what? That's why he says renunciation is transcendence. You transcend your values. You don't get transfixed with the things. The problem of us is you get something, you get transfixed. That's called attachment. You're stuck to that. You don't move to the next one. You don't move to the next one. You don't move to the next one. And the law of karma, law of life, law of renunciation says you get transfixed, you are in trouble. You will suffer. How you suffer will vary from person to person. One may suffer from material, another may suffer from physical, another may suffer from emotional, another may suffer from intellectual, another may suffer from spiritual disease. You can have any sort of diseases. Poverty is a material disease, isn't it? What is poverty? I wanted to, release people from poverty. Why? That's a disease. Illiteracy is an intellectual disease. Therefore, what we are going to do, make them literates. Make them do this, make them do this. And what is so interesting about all this is, whatever you consider as better is nothing but the opposite of your current problem, isn't it? What is a better life? I want to live a better life. What is your definition of better life? Think carefully. My definition of better life is what? That is why we provide things to our kids. You see, I wanted to give better things to my life, my child. Why I want to give better things to her? What is it that I consider as better? Opposite of my past. In the past, I had to walk 2 miles to go to school. What is better life? For him, better life is provide a vehicle to the child to go to school. Give him a bicycle. And the fellow who have been having bicycle to go to school says what? Have a moped. Better life, that is. Exactly opposite. Having this and that. Because here the problem is what? You got to pedal. There you don't have to pedal. Opposite, no. Isn't it? For a cycle to move, you got to pedal. Motorbike also is what? Problem. So what do you do? Have a car. Having a car is also a problem. Why? You have to drive. So what do you do? Fix a driver. So I will provide, the fellow who had in the past going to school in the car will never give his child a bicycle to go to school. He'll never give. Who will give? Because according to him, that is not better child. That is not better way of parenting. That's not. My father was never allowing me to buy anything that I wanted. So what is a better father? When I become a father, what will I do? When we are all living in one house, 15 of us in 2 rooms. One is a kitchen, another one is a hall. 15 of us were living there. It's so interesting to see. what is his definition of better life? Exactly opposite. What is the understanding of a better life for a person who had been a single child? He dreams of what? There should be 2, 3 people in the house. It's filling that is. Otherwise, it is each one in one room. You have to text to the person in the next room to call him for dinner. Send a message, and then they'll come. Otherwise, what is life? Life means more people should be there. That's a better way of living. Joint family is a better way of living. Who says that? Nuclear family fellow says joint family is a better one. The joint family fellow says the nuclear family is a better one. See, freedom should be there. There's no freedom there. Now I'll have freedom, says the fellow. Moving. Now, what is it that you consider as ephemeral is what is it that you believe to be better that you should be able to understand as ephemeral, passing. See, right now you are totally convinced about something. See, that's why we go on saying the problem is not ignorance. The problem is you are so sure about what is better, what is good, what is valuable, what is important, what is right for me in life. I'm so clear about it. What is good for me, I know very clearly. What is good for my child also, I know very clearly. See, anywhere you are so sure about something, take it from me straight away. That is your ignorance. That is wrong. I'm so sure. This also you will say, this Vedanta classes, I'm very sure Vedanta will help me in life. And I'm so sure about it. That's the problem. Yes. How do you know that you are growing in life? Spiritual growth is happening in you. How do you know? What is the yardstick? The acid test of your growth is renunciation. And he is trying to explain renunciation. So it's a big, portion running to a few pages explaining what is renunciation. Because it needs a lot of angles. You got to put all that together for you to get an understanding of what is renunciation. So far, we have seen 3 different angles. Now he is giving few more. Okay, we will see that one by one now. So 3 points he has given so far. First, he gave 3 points to explain what is not renunciation. It's not non-possession. It's not running away. It is not that possessing and not contacting. Nor is it contacting, not enjoying. Which means you can be in the world, you can be possessing things, you can contact and enjoy. All that is allowed. Our wrong understanding about renunciation, he gave. Then we saw these 3 points about what is renunciation. Continuing, page number 229. The above dissection of renunciation clears the general misconception of a materialist and a sensualist. A person is adjudged a materialist or not by the value he confers upon material wealth, regardless of the quantum he possesses. When he understands material objects as trivial and trifling, as valueless and a potential impediment to spiritual growth, he is no materialist. Whereas another who carries much value for material wealth, regards it as primary aspect of life, would be a materialist, whether or not he possesses it. Similarly, a sensualist is not judged by the extent of his contact with or enjoyment of sense objects, but by his mental attitude towards them. When a person places sense objects and the pleasures thereof in their proper perspective, realizes their clear limitation, considers them the harbinger of future sorrow and misery, and maintains the suzerainty over them. He is no sensualist even if he were to enjoy them. Whereas the one who considers sensual pleasures as an all important part of life succumbs to the pleasures of the senses would be a sensualist, even if he physically abstains from them. Now he is defining the distinction between materialist and a renunciate. And what is the who is a sensualist and a renunciate? Now, what is the difference between that is what he is deriving here based on the previous analysis. So, first he analyzed what is not renunciation, what is renunciation. If this were to be renunciation and that is not renunciation, then who do you call as a renunciate? Who do you call as a materialist? Who do you call as a sensualist? To which simply he says, it has got nothing to do with the quantum of possession. It's not how much you possess. It is your attitude towards your possessions. Understand them as valueless and a potential impediment to spiritual growth. It is not an impediment to spiritual growth. Remember, you understand that to be potential impediment. That's about it. Because a lot of people consider wealth to be an impediment to spiritual growth. So you should not have wealth. Material things. You should not have anything with you. Lesser you have, greater is your spiritual status, they think. That doesn't mean you should have a lot of things. That's also not. But at the same time, what you understand is it has a potentially, it can drag you. It can take you away from spiritual progress. That you recognize, and then you possess it or not is not the point. You understand the potency of that, potency of the wealth to take you away from spiritual path. I don't have to give example for these things. This is a very, very simple idea to understand. How is that, wealth is more and more, sir. Potential it is. More and more you go, more and more you go, more and more you go. What is happening there? Because the pursuit of wealth itself is backed by the pain of not having it. You're not pursuing wealth with contentment, with fulfillment. Because the people who feel contented don't pursue. For what? I'm happy. Tamas, that is. The moment you feel contented, you stop the pursuit. So for you to kickstart the pursuit, you have to feel that dissatisfaction, discontentment with your current lot. You see? So you start with agitation, you end with agitation alone. I told you earlier about the law of reverse effect. What you don't want to, I don't want to hit the tree. The boy will go and hit the tree only. The tree I don't want to hit. The tree I don't want to hit. More he says tree I don't want to hit, he will go and hit the tree alone. That's how it is done. That's why in the tradition we have this, as soon as the wedding happens, we call the elders to bless the couple first. They don't call the youngsters to, elder in the sense, not in terms of gray hair. Okay. Not in terms of age. Understood this, gray hair means, wisdom. Getting few. Black hair, no wisdom. So all of you who have died, understand. You're covering. Little wisdom comes natural also, you kill it. You cover that also. allow that gray hair to come. Gray hair means it's just a mark. That's about it. Don't take it literally. It could be because of your wrong, habits also, or because of water quality. All those things. Gray hair is not wisdom, but particularly they call the elders to come and bless the couple first. Then others can come and come. Why is because the blessings means you should know how to bless. You see, there's an art of blessing. In blessing, you don't say, without any diseases, be healthy. Vyadi vekke illama nanna irukum. You say, those who know Tamil will understand. I don't know how you translate it. First thing they say is what? Vyadi. Vyadi is what? Disease. But what they're intending is what? Instead of that, how you are supposed to bless is be healthy. You see, without going to jail, without becoming a pauper, without you being, confiscated of all your wealth. Do good business now. Is this the way you bless a fellow who calls you for inaugurating his business? No. Yes, you should know how to bless people. Why? That's what your thoughts are. You see, your thoughts should move in a proper direction. You say that I don't want to hit. So the very pursuit of you acquiring wealth is for what? Dukkha nivarti. So first word is what? Dukkha. Acquisition starts with dukkha. Therefore, it has a potential. That's about it. Therefore, it is a potential to spiritual impediment. Because spiritual growth means moving towards bliss. That's called spiritual evolution. You're moving towards bliss, not moving away from agitation. Because the law says what? If you say, I want to move away from agitation, your focus is always on agitation. Therefore, you will remain agitated. And you will be working, believing that you are going to be getting rid of agitations. You are going to be deepening your agitation more and more. Therefore, he says, a renunciate is one who understands material things to be, material possessions to be a potential impediment to spiritual growth. But of course, same material things can be a potential for spiritual growth also. Potential aid to spiritual growth also. Remember this. It's got nothing to do with the wealth. It is to do with who is wielding it. Like, it's nothing to do with the knife. It's to do with who is wielding it. In the hands of a surgeon, it saves life. In the hands of a criminal, it takes away life. It's nothing to do with the knife. It's to do with who is wielding it. Similarly, it's nothing to do with wealth. It is to do with who is wielding it. The one with this understanding will use wealth for his spiritual growth. And the other one, even when he is using it for spiritual growth, he understands what? It has a potential to impede my spiritual development. He understands that. With all this understanding, if that material wealth need to be possessed, he will possess it. If it need not be, he will not. It's as simple as that. Similarly, sense contacts also. The sense objects. He contacts the sense objects. He enjoys the sense objects without any value for them. The sense objects don't have a suzerainty over him. he has a power over. That sort of a person is the one. So it is nothing to do with physically abstaining from that. It is to do with what? Mentally abstaining from them. Your ability to be mentally away from them, not physically being away. Because you can be physically away and constantly thinking about it. You see, that is a great problem in life. That's why a lot of the psychiatrists, get into trouble in life. Why? Because day in and day out, they keep on hearing what? Problem, 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 problem. You see, their life itself goes, a mess. This therapist and psychiatrist, poor thing. They come home, they talk, they sleep, they eat. What is running in the background? This. They can't switch off. You see, how can you switch off? They don't have the capacity to switch off. So what happens? It carries in the background all the time. If it is carrying in the background, he is not physically there, but mentally he is thinking about the problems and pains of life. Constantly goes on thinking of problems and meeting problems and problems. Opposite, you have Buddha, who declared life is painful, but he is an embodiment of peace. The psychiatrist also says life is painful, problems are, but he is not an embodiment of peace. He is not peaceful. Okay, some of you may get angry with me. So to be politically being correct, nowadays, even teachers have to be politically correct. Sometimes I keep hearing this. Don't politicize this. Don't politicize this. I wanted to ask at least one issue you tell no in life. What is allowed to be politicized? Surgeon will do surgery. Correct? Plumber will do plumbing. Electrician will work with electricity. Politician will do what? And then we call, don't politicize. I don't know, very weird world we are now. A philosopher should not philosophize. And then, a politician should not do politics. And a painter should not paint. Magician, should not do magic. Then who will do? I don't know. But anyway, to be politically correct, some of you may not. Okay. There are few, some of you also is not correct. There are few, psychiatrists who get into trouble. Look at all the fathers of psychiatry, subject. All of them had problems. This side. You go the other side, Buddha, who declared, emphatic declaration he gave. Great truth found by Buddha. What? Life is painful. But that fellow is very peaceful. He said, nah, fraud. You say painful, or else he has to be such a, sadistic fellow. All your life is painful, but my life is very peaceful now. Either it is fraud or it is being sadistic. How can it be? Why is the case? Because they can't click mentally. You see, physically you can move away, but mentally to move away from the sense enjoyments, sense contacts, that is what a renunciate will do. Whether he is in contact or he is not in contact is not his point. Exactly same way, a sensualist is a sensualist. Whether he is in contact or he is not in contact, he will be treated, he will be called as a sensualist when he is mentally thinking of sense enjoyment all the time. Only tragedy is materialist you can identify. Why? Because external to some extent. The sensualist you can't identify, because anyone who has physically abstained will be treated by you as a renunciate. That is why he is explaining this. Now, why suddenly he is bringing in the distinction between materialist, sensualist on one side, renunciate on the other side? Why is he bringing that? Is we still carry the notion the one who is not possessing anything will be treated as a renunciate, and the one who is possessing will be treated by us as materialist. The one who is in contact with the sense objects will be treated as a sensualist. The one who is not contacting the sense object, we understand to be a renunciate. He says the above analysis proves that your understanding is wrong. The way you are categorizing people, the way you are realizing, recognizing people to be materialist, it has got nothing to do with a possession or not possession. Sensualist, it has got nothing to do with contact or no contact. Then what is to do with? It is to do with what is his mental attitude. The mental attitude with which he possesses can be a renunciate. The mental attitude with which he contacts the sense objects can still be a renunciate. Then what defines? Go back to the basics. Go back again. Oh, if this is not, then what is defining that, sir? Go back to previous page and start reading again. What is renunciation? Read that again. Yes. Renunciation is the measure of spirituality, the yardstick of spiritual evolution. As an aspirant evolves to the higher, subtler realms of his personality, he becomes free from the lower, grosser levels. He no longer identifies with the grosser. He grows out of the desires associated with them. In effect, renounces them. As he reaches the height of spiritual evolution, identifies with the Supreme Self, he attains total renunciation when his desires completely fall off. The self within, Atman, is enveloped by concentric layers of matter comprising thoughts and desires. As you move away from your divine center, your ego develops. Your thoughts and desires turn grosser, they multiply. And at the furthest point, your ego is maximized. Your thoughts and desires become grossest, countless. Thus, when you live at the lowest level of your personality, your thoughts and desires are gross and numerous. But as you acquire spiritual knowledge, you begin to entertain higher and nobler values. You move up to the higher realms of your personality. Your thoughts and desires improve in quality and reduce in quantity. Consequently, you renounce the lower. Thus, through daily study and reflection on spiritual literature, you identify with the Supreme Self, the core of your personality. At that stage of your only desire is to realize the self. All other desires vanish. You reach that state of total renunciation. So, renunciation would mean delivering everything to the supreme reality, not considering the body, mind, and intellect as yours, dropping the false idea of your personal self, casting aside your vain, accumulative, and possessive attitude, not arrogating anything to yourself, resigning everything to the reality, approaching everything to the real self in you. You then raise above the little self, the ego. It is your ego that becomes involved, enmeshed in the affairs of the world, obsessed with mundane duties and responsibilities. Raising above the ego and identifying with the real self, you remain above worldly care and anxiety. You remain detached, free from persecutions of the ego. Maintaining that exalted state, you plunge into single pointed meditation, attain spiritual enlightenment. The practice of negating the little self and asserting the real self helps in raising above your false personality, subduing your ego, affecting your copywriting spirit of me and mine. These false and thoughts engender, feed your little appropriating self, the ego. You must negate your ego to attain the state of renunciation. Remember, you are the supreme self. Your self is whole, everything. Asserting the self is accepting everything, the entire world as yourself. Renunciation, therefore, is not giving up anything, but taking up the whole world. Not dispossession, but all possession. Thus renunciation crowned you the King of Kings. This is the next idea. If I wanted to cover the whole point. Another idea he is giving now. Now the see what he is doing is he just analyzing renunciation from various angles. So many ideas to be understood when it comes to renunciation. Now what he is giving here is this. Renunciation is the measure of your spiritual status. This is the defining factor. Now, if this is defining factor, then what is it, sir? It means only this. It is just reduction of the quantity of thoughts and improving the quality of thoughts. So this is called spiritual. Spirituality means only this. Now, what's the meaning of spirituality, sir? Spirituality, what are you putting effort? Spiritual practice, a spiritual effort. When you say, what is a spiritual effort for? It's only for this purpose. Reduce in the quantity and improve in quality. Reduce the quantity of thoughts and improve the quality of thoughts. When you do these two things, you are growing spiritual. This is called renunciation, he says. So what is renunciation? Renunciation is to reduce the thoughts and improve the quality. How? And that's what he is explaining. How that happens, how that goes is what he is giving here. See, at the gross level of your personality, lowest point, you have maximum desires. Too many desires. Now, as you grow spiritual, you are moving towards the self, Atman. As you grow, you go subtler and subtler. So when you move to the subtler dimensions of life, subtler aspects of your personality, number of desires reduces. Because you are moving towards the subtle, the quality improves. And further you go subtler. Again, you don't get transfixed. You transcend that also. This is where the problem comes for most of us. We move from the gross to the subtle and stay put there. Maximum. And then there is no progression happening. So you are not actually growing. We just move a little up and we are happy with it. It's like, people saying border pass. I've scored. Yeah, you have scored, but the colleges will not even give application form to you. Forget about, giving you admission. Application form will not be given. Why? You're passed, but what is the point? You say. So when you move to the subtle, your desires gets less. When you move further to the subtler aspect, it is still less. You go to the subtlest aspect, very few. When you go to the self, there is only one desire. Just a desire for self-realization. That's about it, nothing else. So this is the growth he's saying. This is the hierarchy he gives. Now, subtle, go to the chapter, human composition. Now, we can't be explaining that here. Okay, what is the subtler dimension of your personality? Grossest aspect of personality is the body. Subtler than body is mind. Subtler than mind is gross intellect. Subtler than gross intellect is subtle intellect. Subtler than the subtle intellect is the self. The subtlest is the self, the pure consciousness. So, when you identify yourself with the body, if you take yourself to be just the body, you are the grossest personality. What happens, sir? The quality of your thoughts and the quantum of desires you will have is more, and the quality of those desires also will be gross. It's a gross desire. Want to eat, eating. The worst thing to have is this. Parent, worst parenting, worst teacher. There is a list they give. Very, very, very interesting. Worst friend. What is the worst teacher you have? What is the worst guru you have? All that. Who is the worst parent? You say, and that also they give one very interesting. One say worst father. Who is the worst father? They give. Lowest quality of a father is not giving to the child he eats. That's a worst father. Fascinating one. That is called gross. A gross personality is one who lives his life for the tongue, denying even to his own child. Says, even to his child, he will not give. You say, this is called gross. And at the bodily level, quantum is enough. So much is there. So many are there. In fact, when it comes to eating, just one sense you have at the physical level, how many desires you can have? Seeing. How many things you can entertain a desire for seeing? Hearing. I've heard. Madurai Maniyer, I've heard all, but the Sindhu Bhairavi Raga, Madurai Maniyer, is not there. Really, it's not there. If any one of you find out, you can send it across to me. I've been searching for that. I don't know for how many years. Madurai Maniyer, Sindhu Bhairavi Raga. All other raga, this, that, I have heard him singing this, I have heard him singing that. And then this is with reference to Carnatic. And then you have to go to Hindustani. And then you have to go to Western. And then you have to go to Greek. And then you have to go to this. How many things to hear? How many things to see? How many things to do? So much is there. The quantum, if you take the gross level, body level, maximum. Subtler than body is mind, emotions. Emotional desires, how many you will have? How many emotions you can have a desire? Finally, it will come to only few dozens, that's all. A dozen of emotions also you will have desire for. You can have desire. Like eating cuisines also. How many cuisines are there? How many things are there? Body. You come to intellectual, how many are there? Much, much less compared to emotions. Last new political ideology was in 18th century. End of 18th century, beginning of 19th century. That's all. In the 20th century, no new ideology had come about. No new idea. The same thing. Judah only. ideas, the intellectual level, how many desires you can have? You can't have many desires at the intellectual level. Few. You come to the subtle intellect, what is it, sir? Very few. Very, very few desires you can have. At least the gross intellectual level, there are possibilities of having little more. But at the subtle intellectual level, even less. With reference to the self, what is it? There's only one desire possibility. You can't have any desires. There's only one desire for self-realization. So what he says is, as you keep entertaining, that's what, identify with the subtler aspect means, as you start entertaining, that's the subtler aspects of your personality, means subtler desires you start entertaining. With reference to the grosser aspect, what happens? It drops. That dropping of that gross desires is called grosser desires, is called renunciation. The solidification of that is called ego. That's how the ego gets developed. Your ego is so solid as you have grosser desires. So more than grosser the desire, solid your ego is. Subtler the desires, finer your ego is. Only one desire, for all purpose, no ego. When that desire also goes, no ego at all. You have erased completely your ego. Erasing that ego is what he is referring here. How that comes about? That comes to you only through this process of what? Study and reflection. The daily study and reflection on spiritual literature will give you this opportunity to identify with the subtler aspects of life. When you identify with that, what happens is this. Is where you start dropping your desires. It's not that you will be putting in effort to drop the desires. Those desires will drop by itself. You don't have to do anything. When your ego is gone, now what is this ego? Ego is a sense of me and mine. That's called ego. Ego means exaggerated opinion about yourself. That's called ego. I have an exaggerated opinion on myself. Exaggerated self-opinion. Me, mine. Me, mine. Me, mine. Anything that is not me or mine, if something is not bracketed with reference to me, mine, what do I do with that? I don't care. Since when India started worrying about corona? December 2019. Did India bother about corona? No. Italy was worried about corona. January, February, Italy was worried about corona. Indians were not worried about corona at that time. Why? It does not come to India. Once it comes to India, my country is affected. Then what happens? Mine. That's what is the meaning of it. Once it comes to Karnataka, what happens? When it comes to Bangalore, what happens? When it comes to my area, what happens? In my building, my house, me, you can't sleep after that. You can't sleep, you don't allow others also to sleep peacefully. You know, you so much. I'm not saying you should not take enough precautions and all that, please. You know, but when you start paying attention to it, only when it falls into the category of me, mine, that is ego. And what does this ego want to do? Yes. Now the problem is, it's so interesting. In the name of spiritual, you know what you do? You start fighting with ego. And you say, no, I want to drop my ego. What are we supposed to do, sir? We should destroy ego. That's what he says, no, erase ego. He says, ego should get erased. Now, what is the eraser with which I can erase my ego? This is a great question everybody asks. I want to erase my ego. I want to erase. How to drop ego? How to drop ego? How to drop ego? But nobody asks how to drop my exaggerated opinion I have for myself. Now, ego has a cunning play with you. It starts giving you a false idea of fighting. Gives you the sense of fighting. Your ego gets a great satisfaction in fighting. When you fight, you get a great kick out of it. Tremendous satisfaction in fight. When you are not able to fight with others, you start fighting with yourself. And when your ego is fighting with itself, we get a false sense of, I am putting spiritual effort. Now I have become spiritual. I am fighting my negativities. You get a tremendous motivation. You see, that's why you don't find any interesting things in the class. If you carefully see the class, you will not find anything interesting here. Why? Because we don't say fight with anything. At least you have to fight. You say, oh, why are you behaving like this? Why are you getting angry? What is the point of getting angry? Why are you being so negative? Why are you so bad? Why are you carrying this jealousy? Why are you fighting? Drop this jealousy, drop this anger, fight with it, fight with this. Fighting with your own negativities gives you a tremendous kick. And fighting means what? Huh? Fighting means what? Fighting is not like a pillow fight you have in the house. Some of you might have had. I'm not talking about the pillow fights. Fighting means war. War means violence. Wanting to destroy. You say fighting means what? To destroy. I want to destroy that. Now, when you say, I am fighting with myself, who is the winner? Who is the loser? At least when you fight with outsider, there is a possibility. There is a winner, there is a loser. You can be a winner, you can be a loser. When you fight with yourself, your ego will do what? Your mind doing is what? Your desires goes on doing it. It gives you that false notion. A law of life says, drop it, man. Drop that ego. Now, how do you drop that ego? Not by fighting it. By fighting, you can never drop the ego. Then what you should do? Identify with the subtler aspect. Identify with that, he says. Pick up the study. Through the study and reflection on the spiritual literature, you identify with the Supreme Self. As a result of you identifying with the Supreme Self, as a result of you realizing the totality, individuality gets dissolved. sublimated, destroyed, automatic. You don't fight with it. The problem is this: the moment you start that spiritual things, if at all you start something, immediately we expect to fight with ego. You say, there's the one who, inflicts pain on others. You inflict pain on others. We call him as a sadist. There is a word they have for a person who is inflicting pain on himself. Earlier, you are whipping others. Now, you are whipping yourself. Either case, whipping continues. You see, only the target is shifted. Earlier, the target is outside somebody, and now you whip yourself, and you call that as what? Spiritual. This person will be treated as a very spiritual person. What not spiritual, sir? If I don't give food to you and make you starve, sadist. I don't eat and starve, fasting. You call that person as what? Very spiritual, sir. Every Ekadeshi he will practice Vratam. And do what? Waiting for Dwadasi to come. You see, to eat. That's all. Ekadeshi Vratam we practice. So perfect. So perfect. I remember this, we go to the Sabarimala. People practice, this resistance. They don't eat meat. They don't eat this. They don't smoke. No drinking. And these fellows can't survive without it. And it is so interesting. The moment they come down to the plains, the first thing they do is, hotel. Straight they go, and you see the way they eat. But before that, he is calling himself as Swami, Swami, Swami. Everybody is Swami for them. Very genuine. Very genuine. But what are you doing there? It's nothing to do with one religion, please. It's all religion. Everywhere it's the same rule only. There's no difference. It's just the manner in which it is done. That's all. The places where they put so much of restrictions on themselves. What are you doing now? Earlier, I was suppressing others. Now I suppress myself. But suppression will continue. Now, Vedanta says it will not help you in any way. So don't try to fight with yourself. Don't fight with it. Because you will be the loser. Either case, you are a loser. Whatever happens, you are a loser. Now, don't fight. Don't try to whip yourself unnecessarily. It's not necessary at all. Why do you have to whip yourself? It's not needed. Then what you do? But Vedanta will not look interesting. Okay, Vedanta says you are the Supreme Self. It will not look interesting. But when I say you are a sinner, and you got to work your way up to become a saint, that will look so interesting. You are bad. Start working to become good. That will look so interesting. Why? Because you have something to fight, no? Isn't it? Think carefully. Why do you want to fight with it? That fighting spirit is what is called as ego. I don't know what idea people have about ego. Ego means the spirit of fighting, the desire for fighting, the desire for resistance, desire to be in violence. That is called ego. He says, don't start fighting. The moment he says, you got to erase ego. That's what I'm also attempting, sir. How to destroy that, this me, my nothing. He has given the method that what you should do is start identifying with the subtle aspect of life. Subtle. The effort that you are going to put in to identify with the subtle the subtler, the subtlest, the self remains the same. Therefore, he says, straight away go to the self. No. Why all this? Hmm? Straight away go there. It doesn't make any difference. Anyway, you have to do the digging. When you have to do the digging, why are you digging for coal? Dig for diamond. That is what he says. Why do you compromise and say, I want to dig for coal? But step by step we should go. That looks far interesting for us. Logical it is. Step by step. First step is what? First, let me identify with the subtle. What I'm going to do? From physical, I'm going to get emotional. And then what I'll do? I'll become gross intellect. And then I'll become subtle intellect. And then I'll come to the self. No logic. This is the way your mind justifies and continues to be in the same level. You see, the ego, the self-justifying spirit is called ego, has that exaggerated notion about itself, that false personality, false notion, false idea about your own things. Me, before you go to that ego, what you should do, sir? Me and mine. So interesting. How that develops is first comes me, then comes mine. When it develops, the sense of me comes first. I is there. I am hungry. The child will cry. Even the innocent baby will cry. Me, I am. The sense of I is the first thing to come. Me comes first. Then comes my toy. My toy. This is my mother. This is my father. This is my house. This is mine. All that will come later. But I comes first because I is the foundation on which all the mind is built. But when you are removing, you can't remove me first. You have to remove mine first. There is a great thinker called Kiva Jagannathan in Tamil literature. A very, very popular figure he is. Kivaja, we call him as. He gives a beautiful example. He says, when you are going out, you dress yourself. You put the banyan first and then shirt. When you are removing, what you do? How you do? You don't argue saying, first I put the banyan, no? So let me remove banyan first and then I'll remove my shirt. No. When you are wearing it, you will put the waist. They say, no? English, banyan, some of you may not recognize. In Tamil Nadu, we call it as banyan. That's what he says. So I'm just quoting him. First you put that and then you put the shirt on. But when you are removing, you remove the shirt first and then button. Same way here. First thing comes is me, then mine. But then when you are working on me, you can't work with me first. You got to work on mine first. Mine is what? All your possessions. This is my car. This is my house. This is my chappal. This is my shoes. Oh, people fight for that also. My room. Houses I have seen, they write their name. In a house, there are only 3 fellows are there in the house. I don't know to whom they are writing it. Right? I put a board outside. I won't mention the name, put the name and then say, mine. This is my room, my toy, my name, my fame, my teacher, my guru, my God. God is not important. Because it is my God, there is a value for God. If it is not my God, I don't care. I don't care what happens to other gods, no. As long as Krishna is saved, I don't care what happens to Christ. Yeah, it deserves it. Allah venu, he say. Socrates, what happened to Socrates? Who cares about what happens to Socrates? You don't care. What happened to Buddha? What happened to Muhammad? What happened to Mahavira? What happened to Rama? What happened to Ramana Maharishi? What happened to Ramakrishna Paramahamsa? What happened to Ramatirtha? Who cares about all? As long as my this is taken care of. Mind. Mind comes last. But that's the first thing you will encounter. When you start working towards your ego, first thing you encounter is mind. That's what he says. That possessive attitude. That desire to accumulate what you are not having and feeling that possessiveness with reference to whatever you have accumulated. Drop that first. Then you can drop that ego and all those things. So first remove the shirt. Yes. Beautiful example gives. So this dropping of this, the sense of me. Right. Now the problem is we do the negative part. I am not this, not that. Not that we do, but you don't do the assertive part. You want to negate the false. See, like all of us today are so inspired to fight against corruption. Isn't it? We are so interested to fight corruption. Are we showing any intensity similar to promote honesty? Which one you get triggered quickly? When Anna Hazare went and sat, I am sitting for against corruption. Every day, everywhere, people are talking about that only at that time. He said, corruption, sir, corruption. These days, youngsters are against corruption. I was working, going to a college to teach. So the college, those guys were, coming up with so much of, things, want to fight against corruption. We are not for corruption, that, all those things. I said, bribery, everywhere, bribe, very bad. I said, if you guys were against corruption, if the management were to believe that all you fellows are against corruption, why they are not conducting exams with open books? Does any college conduct exams with open books? Why? Suppose if they were to conduct exams with open books, what will happen? Now, is that not corruption? Huh? Will anyone come to that college examination hall and say that, no, sir, examination means what? They wanted to know how much I have understood, really. So I will come and explain what I have understood. If I know, I will answer. If I don't know, forget it. I will move out. How many of them will say that? Otherwise, why is it that every year, okay, last 2 years we have not had this, squad, flying squad will be coming, for this final exams, board exams. Remember, flying squads. And from this school, they will have invigilators from other school. From that school, they will go to this school as invigilator. Why? If the same school teacher were to be standing as an invigilator for the same school students, what is going to happen? And then we say, youngsters are against corruption. They're not against corruption. They are frustrated. They are not getting a chance. That's about it. But we get so inspired for fighting against poverty. How many of us slog for promoting richness? That will not look so inspiring. This is called ego. That is why he says, negate the little self and assert the real self. Both needs to be done parallelly. In fact, between the two, he says, first assert the self. First understand there is a self. Start identifying with it. And then what you do, sir, as a specific practice, he says you can do this negation of the little self and assertion of the higher self. But your ego will get a kick only when it gets a chance to fight. Whipping, remember this. You have to whip. When you turn that whipping on yourself, you treat those people to be spiritual. That's not spiritual, please. Earlier, you are critiquing others. Now you start critiquing yourself. Earlier, you are blaming the world for everything. Now you start blaming yourself for everything. You consider that to be, I have turned introvert now. Now I have become spiritual now. You're only, the target of whipping is changed. Instead of whipping the other, you start whipping yourself. You're hurting yourself. Instead of hitting others, you hit yourself. That is more frustrating, that is more painful. That is even more violent. Violence at the peak, that is. It's very negative, remember. So, how you should practice renunciation? He says, start working towards the higher. Start conceiving the higher. Start relating to the higher concepts, higher ideals, higher values of life. The highest is the self. So he says, gradually you go, but hit the highest point. The highest point is the self. So once you hit that, the quality of your thoughts gets so good and the quantum of desires drop. That's called renunciation. See you in the next class. Hari Om.